What's up, guys? Gamer475 back at it again with another video. And now I think it's time to finally finish ranking the generations of Total Drama with the Redonkulous race, the generation that I have been procrastinating to rank for the longest time, because this one is by far the hardest one to rank in my opinion. Per usual, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed, and hit the notification bell so you never miss when I post another video. Starting off the list is Leonard and Tammy, the LARPers. Now, I'll admit, Leonard I kind of enjoyed back when he was in Pocateo Island. And I thought he would have learned by now that maybe he, I don't know, realized he doesn't have magical abilities, he's not a wizard. But nope. He still thinks so, and then to make things worse, he added Tammy to his team, which is just even more confirmation to him that he has some sort of magical ability. I'll give it to him this time around, though. He does try to play more strategically by making alliances with other teams, which doesn't seem to go his way. Either when it comes to the Goths, the Adversity Twins, or even maybe trying to do like a comedic routine with Owen or something, just kind of creeping him out a bit instead. He even continues to basically not even take the game seriously while he partakes for the short amount of time we do see him. As for Tammy, she just plays into all of this. She's kind of just there to be there. I feel Tammy just kind of existed so that Leonard could return. And I feel like having the two of them back, having Leonard back and then adding Tammy into the season was just a huge mistake, because there were so many characters that could have taken that spot. Next up is the Vegans. I'll be honest, at first, they were my least favorite team, but over time, they started to get a bit better. Lori and Miles started off quite normal, basically being the stereotypical vegans of basically what people think a vegan is like. They do, though, seem to have a lot of fun during the competition. Like when they went to Paris, their drawing, they appeared to have a lot of fun while doing so. However, I think their downside is that they are maybe a bit too relaxed and less focused on the competition, more focused on like Mother Nature and everything, because it causes them to almost be eliminated in one round, causing them to have to eat a meat buffet, which, granted, afterwards they end up finding out they didn't actually have to eat. I do give Lori a bit of credit, though, because she's the only person I've known of in Total Drama history that is more than willing to beat the crap out of the host. Out of this generation. Every other generation would most likely do it in an instant. However, there were a lot of teams that I found I just enjoyed a lot better than them, so they would end up at the bottom of the list, sadly. Next up is Taylor and Kelly, mother and daughter. This team is one of the few who will be ranking this low because of just one side of the team. That side being Taylor, who was spoiled and annoying, and she seems to act like she's the best at everything, and we see from her drawing in Paris, she has no art skill whatsoever. She also fails to have any physical strength as well, and proceeds to blame all of the mistakes that the team makes on her mother, when in reality it's her own fault. And it isn't until their final round that they partake in that Kelly finally stands up for herself, albeit a little terrible of a method I feel she used, leaving her kid to dangle there. I mean, if she fell, that could really cause some injuries. But granted, she did stand up for herself, which is what she needed to do. However, like I said, they rank this low mainly because of Taylor's terrible behavior towards her mother the entire time. In 15th place is the geniuses, Elodie and Mary. Albeit, I didn't know where to place them at first, because we don't see much about them, and because they're not very, focused on for the time that we see them. They're mainly just there, they make a couple little science-y things. However, I do have to put them in this exact spot, because I feel the other teams left have more character development to them, Are they more interesting than these people? But the people below them have factors that make them as bad as they are. They do have their interesting moments, like when Mary uses a magnet to scare the sharks away so that she can get the tip. And I feel the smarts that they have is also happens to be their downside, because they overanalyze the challenge, causing them to end up losing in the end. Afterwards is the daters or haters, Stephanie and Ryan. This is another one of those teams that rank this low because of just one person. They started off as the usual couple. They enjoyed each other's company greatly. However, over time, Stephanie began to become more competitive and more hateful towards Ryan when he would mess up in a challenge or something, going and being extremely rude to him, to the point where eventually they would break up, causing their name, the Haters, to be born. And over time, she would become even more angry at him all the time, yelling at him, blaming him for everything, which is just such a toxic kind of thing to do. And eventually, she even ends up hitting him and threatening him at one point, too. But in the end, they do end up getting back in a relationship with each other, which I feel just big mistake. And they rank this low mainly because Stephanie's character is just so mean-spirited, I feel. In 13th and 12th is the Rockers and Step Brothers. They place in the same spot because they were eliminated at the same time, so they have about the same amount of character development themselves. Rock and Spud are mostly fun-loving guys, so it seems. Albeit Spud is a little dumber than Rock. However, Spud definitely does end up having fun in the competition, which is something that's great to see, because not many people do have fun while doing this, because it's basically a death-defying act. They're also shown to be really supportive of the other teams, like when Mickey and Jay are the first people to complete the tennis challenge. They sit there and they'll applaud them with the surfers. And Spud, however, fails at some parts of the challenge to the point where Rock has to rely on kind of blackmailing his teammate with food, which I feel is something you shouldn't have to do in this kind of competition, which is more or less why they've ended up so low on the list. However, Spud does have his advantages in the game, like when it came to air guitar, which he completely destroyed everyone else at easily, when he was capable of picking up the snake and getting the rabbits that it ate out of it so that they could end up moving on in the challenge. And I also kind of liked Spud's character because of his delayed reactions, because seeing his reaction appear a few seconds or minutes after something has happened is just funny to me. And then when it comes to the Step Brothers, the two of them were basically fighting the entire time we see them. No matter where it was, they would always be fighting during the challenges while they were supposed to be focusing on the game, and it doesn't take long in being locked in a cell with each other to the point where they finally start to bond with one another. And granted, I feel like this main thing is just what gets them so low, is that they spent most of their time in the game hating one another instead of focusing on the actual game. In 11th place is the fashion vloggers, Tom and Jen. These two were interesting to me because I enjoyed their characters quite a lot. However, I just couldn't put them any higher. But they do definitely look out for each other throughout their time on the competition, like when they're doing the skywalk, and Jen even able to hold on to Tom after he gets scared by a shark. They run through the geysers looking out for one another while doing so. But then it isn't until they reach Transylvania where they finally start to have problems shown in their team, being that they end up getting into a fight over who started their entire kind of work that they do. And I feel this is why I couldn't put them any higher on the list, is because some of the other teams, while having issues with each other, it doesn't get as severe as this. However, in the end, they rank higher than the other teams that have had these sorts of problems, because afterwards, once Tom has like no skill whatsoever in gymnastics, it ends up being Jen that convinces him to keep going with the challenge until he encourages him that he can make it. And eventually they do get eliminated from it, but I feel it helps them connect more as a team. In 10th place, the Adversity Twins. Jay and Mickey, I think, were some of the funniest characters on this season because they served as just a pain magnet the entire time. And granted, they definitely proved my point wrong when I thought that they wouldn't have made it far on the show, because it seemed as if no matter where they went, bad luck would just follow them. Basically because they'd think they're cursed. However, they're actually right below what's cursed. That's them. They also didn't have many good relationships with the other teams, being easily threatened by them, since they're easy targets to pick off for the competition. However, they do form a temporary alliance with the sisters, which does unfortunately end after their bad luck catches on to them. However, they also manage to have advantages, like how their irrational kind of how they can't stand the sound of a squeegee. It ends up helping them win the tennis challenge first before anyone else is capable of finishing it. Later on in the game, it just seems as if their bad luck continues affecting them until the very team that they ended up hitting with their bad luck just so happens to be the one that takes them out of the game due to Mickey's fear of germs. And I honestly feel like these guys could have done a lot more if it weren't for that one thing. I feel they could have grew more as a character and made it a lot further than they did. 9th place is tennis rivals, Jerry and Pete. This is where a lot of people will disagree with me, but I've placed them here for one simple reason. They just seem like the relatable kind of person that makes dad jokes all the time. And they seemed more competitive with each other than with the other teams, to the point where Jerry even enjoyed watching Pete get injured since the two of them are rivals with one another. He even shoves him off the zip line because of, I believe, a game that he beat him at. Afterwards, they seem to just start cracking jokes with each other all the time, having just the best time that they could for the short amount of time that they're around. And I feel the fact that they're more on the positive side of things than competitive with the other teams and kind of hateful towards everyone, I feel is what gets them so high up. In 8th place is Dwayne and Dwayne Junior, the father and son team. This is basically every parent with their kid ever. Dwayne just kind of embarrasses Junior at a moment's notice and seems to mess a ton of things up, like when he messes up the elevator in the very first challenge, causing them to have to exit and start running up the stairs. Dwayne proceeds to fight with one of the judges during one of the challenges because the sandcastle they made wasn't good enough. He even accidentally steals the fossil that the vegans found, not knowing it was theirs, thinking that things would be perfectly fine, only to end up angering Lori and causing her to become frustrated with them, constantly messing up the Icelandic saying over and over again to the point where Junior had to start kind of taking over in charge of the team since his father continuously would get himself injured or mess a ton of things up. Dwayne, on the other hand, I do have to give some credit because he's shown to be a good father. Like, he cares a lot about his son. Like, when he does get separated with him, he's super excited and happy to see his kid again. And then when they do eventually get eliminated, they are still positive with it about one another. They're still nice towards each other throughout everything that they've been through. And it helps kind of grow a bigger bond between the two of them. In 7th is the Goths team. At first, I didn't like them at all. I feel they just kind of seemed depressing. And then over time, you realize that that's kind of their point. And then the fact that they adopt Loki afterwards just makes things so much better, too. But they start off kind of being there mostly to tick Dawn off, since they never seem to show any emotion whatsoever. And then they reach Transylvania, and they seem so happy, basically. I think it's as happy as we'll see them when they end up going there, because they've always wanted to go. They do formally quit the competition, however, when they get ungothed, which honestly never thought I would have to see someone quit the competition. And they come back later after gaining their outfits back. Ennui is also shown to have a weird kind of animal magnetism ability, which he's not too proud of, but it isn't until he goes and finds Loki that he seems to take a huge liking to him and become kind of attached to him. Because once the Goths steal him, they make an effort to not focus on the competition, but instead to go find Loki. And I feel Crimson and Ennui are that one couple in total drama that has no toxic factors to them whatsoever. Everyone else has had something wrong with them, but these two seem to genuinely care for one another throughout the entire time they've been on the show. 6th place is the Police Cadets. Making it all the way to the finale definitely didn't do them many favors, because there's still people that rank way above them. And that's mainly because MacArthur is the reason that this team ranks so low. Sanders is the generic good cop, while MacArthur is more or less the bad cop of the team, being more than willing to break a few laws or commandeer vehicles during the competition, even fake a police siren just to help them get further in the game, while Sanders, on the other hand, wants to make things more fair and keep the game simple for everyone. MacArthur is also shown to have great amounts of strength that she can use during the game, and is also having a bit of a soft side, like when she breaks her partner's arm by accident. She is shown to be remorseful for it, which would stop her from ending up lower on this list. In the end, the two of them, genuinely, they work well together, however, they do have their flaws. In 5th place is the Ice Dancers, the most villainous team in the entire history of Total Drama. No one else has ever been a bigger villain than this, I feel. Granted, from the very beginning, they've been more than happy to cheat their way just to get further in the game. Jose, on the other hand, more so than Jacques. And Jose, even when they end up in 4th, 3rd, 2nd, anything other than 1st, she will go into a blind rage. And it isn't until she ends up cursing them where things start to get interesting. Because then they start to become more desperate to win the game, being able to take more risks and do whatever it takes to win throughout the competition. And then they even go as far as to steal Loki from the Goths team just to get them eliminated. And then they even disconnect the train so that they can end up in 1st place, ending up earning them a penalty for doing so, to which Jacques ends up normally trying to take the lead of the team and keep things going simpler. But then he isn't much better than Jose, since he's also willing to cheat to help get them further in the game, like when he puts oil all over the emu that the sisters team needs to go and catch. And which is why they rank lower than the other teams left on the list. In 4th place is Emma and Kitty, the sisters. These two start off with very different personalities to one another. Emma being extremely snarky and more focused on the competition. Kitty being the more fun-loving one and more willing to talk with the other teams. Being willing to open up an alliance chance with the Adversity Twins, convincing her sister as well even, while Emma is more out of the idea of doing so. And then they even bond with the reality TV pros Owen and Noah over time, starting to show a bit of a nicer side of Emma, to the point where Kitty then has to be the one to take over as the kind of tough one on the team. And then they also even help out Carrie and Devin while their time on the show, until they eventually do get eliminated. In 3rd place is Brody and Jeff. I'm going to start off by saying I was surprised to see Jeff back, but yet have him not interact with any of the people he's competed against before. Because he knew Owen and Noah since the minute he showed up here, but yet never even spoke with them. And then Brody, we've already spoken about Jeff before. He's a fun-loving guy. He hasn't changed much. Brody is basically the same as Jeff. They're here, they just want to have a lot of fun while doing the competition. And since Bridget wasn't available, Brody was the stand-in. Like the Rockers, they're shown to show kind of kindness towards the other teams, like when the Adversity Twins finished 1st in the tennis competition. And I feel like having these two be the winners of the show was just a great way for them, because they had one of the best kind of bonds that they could have had on this show. In 2nd place is Carrie and Devin, the best friends. These two have a confusing relationship to me. They start off basically just friends, and they still look out for each other. Devin being extremely kind towards Carrie, trying to help her get over her fear of worms. And then it isn't until Devin ends up getting dumped that things start to go downhill quite a bit, because Devin starts to go through those phases of a breakup. He becomes more depressing over time, angry, and overall, it doesn't end well up until the point where Carrie ends up being the one to help make him feel better. And in the end, seeing them have to get medically evacuated from the game was just upsetting, because I feel if they didn't get medically evacuated, they could have made it all the way to the end and even won the show. And there's still one team I feel ranks above them, however. That being Noah and Owen, the reality TV pros. Noah in the original show was a bit of a pain. He was sarcastic, he was snarky, no one really enjoyed his company. Owen, on the other hand, being the fun-loving guy he is. So having the two of them here is kind of a polar opposites team. And per usual, Noah starts off being the extremely snarky version of himself that he is. Owen, however, still being the fun-loving guy, afraid of flying, however, he still proceeds to hang on to Noah basically as close as possible. Noah eventually, kind of like Emma, starts to show a nicer side, however, when they start to hang out with each other more, and even is willing to give a ring to the Adversity Twins team, Noah claiming it's not because he's falling for someone when it is. Noah even gains a whole boost of confidence from Owen after giving him a pep talk so that he can manage to defeat Mickey and Jay, reaching the end during the air guitar contest before them. Noah does fall into his slight depression though, but I feel it made them a lot better because it showed that Owen genuinely cares for his friend, since he does whatever he can to try and cheer him up throughout the time on the competition. And having them both go home as early as they did, to me, I didn't enjoy seeing, because I enjoyed having the two of them there, and I would love to see them back for another season of the show. But that's all I got. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Would you change any of the rankings? What's your opinion on the teams? And I will see you next time.